Hi, everyone. I'm Louisa Owen Sandstrom, founder of Patternmaking Public Places. PIP, for short, is a project working to democratize access to pattern making skills by removing barriers of geography, economics, age, language, intimidation, and more. In 2019, we did free pattern making demos in public parks in all 5 boroughs of New York City. And this year, we're excited to welcome in a series of amazing guest pattern makers. So today is our 3rd event of the 2020 season, and I'm excited to introduce you to Julia John, who will be leading an innovative demonstration called Pattern Making from the Body. Julia is an artist and educator based in Brooklyn. She's a graduate of the Maryland Institute College of Art, where she studied fiber. Her artwork utilizes dye, embroidery, weaving, and screen printing, most often manifesting as garments. She is interested in the in-between space of art and fashion, and her work plays with this line. Having recently completed an MA in teaching, Julia has experience teaching art to K-12 students in a variety of settings and is passionate about sharing her love of textiles with young people through teaching. A couple quick notes. This event is absolutely 100% free because we want to make these empowering skills as accessible as possible. And we feel really good about that. However, if you're watching now or in the future and feel moved to make a donation in recognition of Julia's work, we will not say no. Her Venmo is at Julia-John, which I've posted in the live chat. So we're recording this as a live webinar, but we'll make the video available forever afterward. In a few days, it'll be available at patternmakinginpublicplaces.com and on YouTube. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to submit questions or comments in Zoom's chat or Q&A areas, and I'll pass them to Julia. I will also monitor the YouTube live stream chat, so feel free to submit there as well. Julia, I'm so excited for your demo. Welcome, and I will pass things over to you now.
All right, hi everyone. I just want to second what Louisa was saying. I'm so excited to be teaching this workshop and sharing some of my pattern making skills with you. This workshop was developed originally for kids, for middle school aged kids. But I think that it's actually a great skill and way of approaching pattern making for anyone of any age. So this workshop is open to any participant. And what I like about this, we're going to be patterning directly from our body. And so what that means is we're going to be lying down on a piece of paper and tracing ourselves and then creating a pattern for a pair of pants from that tracing. And I think this just allows us to engage a little more directly with the process of pattern making. It takes away some of the numbers and math, which I think can make people a little bit nervous. And I think it allows us to work with our body in a more intuitive way. And we're also going to be using supplies from around the house. So I'm going to start by just talking a little bit about what we're going to need for our pants pattern. So I'm going to pull my easel over. First, and most importantly, you'll need your body. Secondly, you're going to need a buddy. Your buddy, you'll only need for about 5 minutes or so, just to trace your body onto the pattern, and then the rest you'll do yourself. You're gonna need scissors, a pen or a pencil, a ruler, or a straight edge of some kind. I might end up just using this piece of wood. We're not gonna really measure a lot, but we will need to make straight lines. You're going to need a piece of paper larger than your body. So something that you can use, you can tape pieces of newspaper together. You can tape shopping bags together, like brown paper shopping bags, or just take printer paper and you can paste it together or tape it together. And that's going to work really well. And then lastly, you're going to want a tool called a French curve. This is something that I actually just printed from the internet. So this is a tool you use in pattern making a lot. But if you click on the handout that Louisa posted in the chat, there is an image of a French curve. You can either print that or you can trace it directly from your computer screen by holding up a piece of paper and tracing the shape and then cutting it out. So you can do that for your curve, or if you don't have a way to do that, you can also use a pot lid for that step. So I'm really hopeful that we can use tools that we have in our house and be able to make pants. So we're gonna start. The first step is that you're gonna find your natural waist. So I'm gonna move this out of the way. And all we do there is, if you bend to the side, that's your waist is where you naturally bend. So it's generally in line with your belly button. So if you drew a straight line through your belly button, that's your natural waist. And that's just, we're gonna use that measurement or that space a lot in our workshop today. So once you've found your natural waist, you're going to complete the step back here where you trace your body onto a piece of pattern paper. So for the sake of filming this efficiently, I recorded this earlier, and I'm gonna share my screen and show you how I did that. So this is gonna be the step where you will need a buddy. So I have a very large piece of paper. Again, you could use newspaper, paper bags, anything like that. But I wanna make sure that I have enough space on either side of my legs and above my waist and below my feet that I can add my seam allowance and my hem allowance and things like that later. So go back to the beginning. I'm having trouble playing it. There we go. So you can see that when I did this, I was wearing sort of a tight-fitting legging. This is gonna help you have a more accurate measurement of your body. And I'm just lying with my feet a little bit more than shoulder width apart. And then I'm putting my hands on my waist. I'm gonna stop for a second. So my hands are on my waist, and then I'm having my buddy trace from one hand all the way around my legs, around my foot. My feet are pointing out and back up to my other hand. So that is my piece that you can see hanging behind me on the wall. But that tracing goes from my waist all the way around each of my feet, up between my legs, and around the other side. So I'm gonna stop my share. So now I have my pattern piece. But obviously our body is not flat. So we need to account a little bit for that three-dimensionality of our body. So you're gonna take a piece of string and you're gonna find the widest part of your legs. So for me, that's usually my hip or my butt, but for you, it might be your waist, it might be your calves, it might be your knees. We just want to make sure that the widest part of us fits through our pants. So I'm going to take my piece of string and I'm just going to hold that up along my side. So if I know I was flat and I trace to about here, I know I just need like a little bit more space to add to my pattern to make sure my pants are gonna wrap around my body. So I'm gonna hold on to that measurement. And then on my pattern piece, I'm gonna add that to my leg. And I'm gonna add that to the waist and to the hip. And I'm gonna add this all the way down my leg. And this is gonna make our pair of pants seem kind of big. And I think that's okay. I think it's a lot easier to take away space in a pattern later than add it, especially as we sew it later. So I'm just gonna draw a line. Please let me know if you can't see these lines, because I think that's gonna be important. Okay, so that line is going from my waist all the way down to right around where my ankle is. Then the next thing that we're gonna do, this pair of pants is gonna be a pair of pants that's the same on the front and back. And it's gonna be made of the same pattern piece 4 times. So we're gonna find the center front so that when those pieces join, they join directly in the middle. So what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna hold up your piece of string between those 2 lines that ended at your waist. Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this piece of string and you're gonna fold it in half, which is gonna allow us to divide by 2. So you're gonna hold this up right here. You're gonna mark where that line is. And then I'm gonna take my straight edge and just draw this over like that. So this line is eventually going to become the waistline of our pair of pants. This will be the outer seam. And next we're going to work on the crotch seam. So from the center front, you're just gonna take whatever straight edge you're using and you're gonna square a line down about maybe a thumb length below your crotch, below the middle of your legs. So like that. So I just want to show you the seam that we're going to make. As you might know, but you might not know, a pair of pants is not just 2 tubes. So there are 2 legs, but when you fold one leg into the other leg, you'll be able to see the seam that we're going to make. So pants usually have a seam like this that's curved, that goes between our legs. And that allows the pants to wrap around your legs and fit around your body. So what we're gonna do for this step is you're gonna take your piece of string and, let me see, that works better. I'm gonna back up. I'm gonna take this, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna thread it between our legs, and it's gonna connect. You're gonna put one end on your belly button and one end where your belly button kind of like would be right through your body. So the same place on your waist, right in the center, you can feel your spine there. And that's how we're gonna figure out how much room we need in that part of the pants. So because we're making this pair of pants one pattern piece, you're gonna choose the side of your body that's bigger, that needs more space in order to fit you. So for me, that's the back, but for you, it might be the front. And all we're gonna do is we're gonna hold on to that piece on our spine, and then you're gonna hold on to the piece that meets in the inseam, so the place where the inner seams of your pants meet. So I'm gonna end up with a piece like that. So I'm gonna do it again from the front so you can see a little bit better, but that's where my belly button is, that's my waist, and I'm just gonna wrap this around to where the inseam of my pants is, like that. So I'm gonna take that measurement again, just so I know. Okay, so I'm gonna mark my string, just with a little bit of Sharpie, so I know how long it needs to be. And then for this next step, you'll want either your French curve or your pot lid. And I'm gonna take my string up so you can see it. This is probably easier to do flat on the ground or on a table. And if you have any questions while you're watching, please feel free to type them in the chat. Either Louisa or I will see them and try to get you an answer, but I just want to make sure that this is making sense. So feel free to ask anything. So for this step, I'm going to take my piece of string. I'm going to take it to the top of my waistline along that center front line. And I'm going to just square this line out. That way, not this way, whoops. And really what we're going to do is we're going to create a curve so that we're allowing space out here. We're going to create a curve that comes down from the waist, down the center front, and then moves outward and lines up with that line we drew before. So I'm just going to mark right here, so I know where to put that curve. And I might also draw, I'm just going to tape my curve down. Like that. And then I'm going to take my French curve. And the reason that this curve is useful is that it kind of allows us to find a curve of best fit when we use it. So as you rotate it, you'll notice that the slope of that line changes. So what I can do with that is I can take it and I can find the place along my curve of that piece of string that's going to fit best. So I would just rotate the curve until I really found the curve that I wanted. So like that. And I'm going to move my string so you can see that a little bit better. But now I just have a curve that's going out. We're patterning one leg, so just this leg over here. And we have a curve. And I just want to show you how you could do that with your lid. So A Padlet's going to do something very similar for us in this case, where we can line it up and find the best curve. The slope of the Padlet is always going to be the same, which makes it a little bit different. But it'll work if you need a curve and there's nothing else in your house. So I think that's the hardest step of making our pair of pants. So yeah, we're across that line. The next thing to do is to decide what you want your pair of pants to look like. So when I made this pair of pants, I chose to make a really wide leg pair of pants. I think that's gonna result in the least problems, but you should choose to draw these lines wherever you would like to. Maybe you wanna make a wide leg pair of pants like I did. Maybe you wanna make a pair of pants that fits a little more closely to your body. It's up to you. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my straight edge, and from our crotch seam that we made, I'm gonna draw my inseam. And my inseam is just gonna go down to where my foot is. So I'm gonna actually draw my sock to let us know where our ankle is. You should be able to see your ankle from your tracing of your body. And you can generally estimate that. But I'm gonna taper my pants in a little bit. And this pair of pants isn't gonna line up with our leg anymore. We've kind of shifted things over a little bit. So you don't have to make a huge pair of pants. But we were just using our leg kind of as a guide. So I'm gonna pull this line in, but you could make a really wide leg pair of pants. You could draw your line here. You could draw your line here. Yeah. We're not really worried about the other leg anymore. I'm gonna draw a line down, and that's gonna be the inner seam of my pant leg. And so then for our other seam, our pair of pants is starting to look really big. So if you'd like to, you can measure the widest part of you. So for me, that was like across my hips, but it might be your knee, it might be your waist, and you just want to make sure that that's going to fit through your pant leg. But we can taper these and make them a little bit smaller. So the way I'm going to make sure that I can do that, I'm going to take my piece of wood, I'm going to hold that up between this purple line and the red line, and I'm just going to mark that. You could use your piece of string too. But no matter where I decide to draw my outer seam, I just need to make sure that that area is going to fit. So you could actually use that as a ruler and connect it up if you wanted. So I might go like this. And please let me know if you can't see or if you'd like me to repeat anything. So I started making sure my pants are gonna fit up here, and then I'm actually gonna make my pants, I'm just gonna draw a straight line down like this. So you can see my pair of pants no longer lines up with my leg, but I know my leg is absolutely gonna fit through here. And I could bring these lines in if I wanted to. Because we're not putting in a zipper, we're just making a elastic waistband. We just want to keep our waist wide enough to fit our leg through. So it's really up to you. And And then the last thing we need to do to complete our pattern before we add our seam allowance is we need to add a hemline. So I sort of estimated where my sock might be. And I'm just going to draw a straight line across because I know that that's where I want my pair of pants to end. If you want shorts, you can do that. If you want capris, or if you want your pants a little bit longer, you can draw this line wherever you would like the pants to stop on your body. So I'm going to draw a line across here. Like that. And I'm just going to outline my pattern piece in another color so that you can see it a little more clearly. So I'm going to outline it in green. So we have a crotch seam. We have our inseam here. This is our hemline. That's our outer seam. And our waistband.
And so, Julia, it looks like you drew the bottom hem pretty much a 90-degree angle to the out seam. Is that approximately how you angled the bottom hem?
Yes. So actually mine looks a little bit crooked. So I might go back in and adjust that, but it's essentially a 90-degree angle, yeah. So I'm gonna fix mine a little bit. Yeah. So that's going to be our pant pattern. If anyone has questions before I add some seam allowance, I'd love to be able to answer those.
Not seeing any yet, but definitely everybody please feel free. Yeah, that looks great though.
Okay, cool. So adding our seam allowance is fairly simple. We're gonna want to add about ½ inch on one side, on the outer seam, our crotch seam, and our inseam. We add our seam allowance so that we have room to sew the pieces together, and we're not sewing right along the edge. So
can I just
we are.
Can I pause for a moment? Sorry, we have just to follow up a little bit more on the bottom hem question. So Kristen is asking, is it 90 degrees to the inseam line or the outer line? And what's the effect on the finished pants if it's not 90?
Yeah, so I was drawing it 90 degrees from the outer seam because this kind of comes straight down. And it's going to meet this pretty squarely. If it like comes at kind of more of an angle, your pair of pants is going to be longer on one side and shorter on the other.
Cool. And that sounds like something too that once your pattern piece is complete, or maybe once you've cut out your fabric, you can kind of hold up and start to see what that angle would be also.
Totally, yeah. So if you think about it, the reason I kind of used a 90-degree angle was because we're going to end up sewing a mirror image piece to our pattern piece. So I think the right angle kind of just helps us make sure everything's going to line up.
Okay, so it sort of depends on the particular kind of taper of the lines that you chose for your in and out seams, but eventually you want it to be parallel to the floor, basically. So it's sort of
essentially, yeah. So okay. Kind of like parallel to our waist. So yeah, parallel to the floor. Because if I had drawn my pant leg to kind of taper in, I would have a different angle.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna add seam allowance. I'm gonna do that in another color. I'm gonna do that in dark green. And because we are pattern making from our body, I'm just gonna use measurements that I kind of rely on a lot. So we're gonna add roughly 1/2 inch to our outer seam, our inner seam, and our crotch seam. For that, I usually use my thumbnail. So I'll just go around and hold up my thumbnail to that line. And I'll draw some seam allowance all the way around. I really like being able to use my body to kind of measure with. I think it makes the process a little more immediate. I do this when I'm ironing and stitching as well. But you are welcome to use a measuring tape or a ruler. And I'm just gonna line up my straight edge with those marks that I made. And add a little seam allowance. Do the same thing over here. And then we'll do the same thing around the crotch seam. So that's going to be our seam allowance. Just checking you can see that. That's our green line. And then we're going to do essentially the same thing with the hem, but we're going to add more space. Because a hemline, we're going to want to be able to fold it over a couple times so that we don't see the raw edge. So I'm going to add 2 inches to the bottom of my pants. And I know that's roughly the length of my thumb. So I'm going to use that to measure. So across the bottom, I'm going to add the length of my thumb. Like that. And we'll square this, draw a straight line across. And then if your pants do taper in a little bit, like mine do, you want to try to mirror the inseam line in the hemline so that when you fold the hemline up, it folds up smoothly and it's not too small. So all I'm going to do here is just add a little angle like that, so that when it folds up, it sort of folds neatly into itself. And this line I'll just square down like that. And then we're going to do something very similar for our waistband. We're making a pair of pants that the waistband is gonna, we're gonna fold it over on itself, kind of like a hem, and then we're gonna thread a piece of elastic through it. So we wanna have enough space to make that casing. So I'm gonna add, I think 2 inches again, because I'm gonna use a fairly thin elastic. I'm probably gonna use something similar to this piece of string, which is about 1/2 inch, I believe. But if you're gonna use a bigger elastic, you're gonna wanna make your casing bigger. So if you have a really wide elastic, you're gonna need more space. But I'm gonna just add around 2 inches again at the top, like this. Let me square that up. And then I'll just draw a line across. Getting a little hard to reach. So that's our pattern piece. We are ready to cut it out, and then we're gonna hold it up to our body and just ensure that it's gonna fit. So if necessary, you can adjust, and you can make a second pattern piece that's gonna fit the other side of your body. As I said, we're gonna use this piece for both the front and the back, but if you have a very large difference between the front and the back, you might want to adjust them. So you might want to adjust this seam if you need to, but I'm just going to cut this out. I'm going to tape it up so you can see it. I'll do the same thing this way. Heading along my dark green line, that is my seam allowance line. In my pocket. And now we have our pattern piece. So the red line was our original leg line, and all of our green lines are our seam allowance line. And that's going to be our pattern piece. So I'll come a little bit closer. But that's kind of what we ended up with. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take my pair of pants, and I'm going to hold it up to one half of my body. I made my pair a little bit big. I think that if you're just starting out, it's good to make your pair of pants a little bit bigger. It's easier to take space off the pattern than to add it. And the same thing when you sew your pants, it's easier to take fabric away than to add it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my waistline kind of with my waist. There's going to be extra space at the top because this waistband would be folded down. You can fold it if you want to. I'm going to line that up with my belly button. I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to tuck it between my legs and make sure that it kind of fits where the inseam would be. And then the same thing with the side of the pants. I'm going to wrap them around my body and make sure that that fits with where the outer seam of my pants would be. So my pants are a little bit big, but that's going to be your pair of pants. If you need to adjust your pattern, you can tape on other pieces of paper and add space, or you can draw new lines and start to take some of that space away. So if I wanted to fit these a little bit more, I might taper this line in over here, and I might taper this line in as well.
So Juliet, is there such a thing as taking out too much? Like how much is too much? How do you know?
absolutely. So you're gonna wanna make sure that there is some space. The waist and the hips right now on my line are kind of, or on my pattern are sort of equal. But you're always gonna wanna make sure that the pants are gonna wrap around your body. And I would start by taking out a little bit and checking this way. And then you can also make kind of a mock-up out of a cheap material like muslin or maybe an old bed sheet and check that they fit you before you sew in your final fabric. So yeah, this is my pair of pants. I want to leave you with a couple of questions before I show you. I can show you quickly kind of how you put them together if we have time. But I wanted to challenge you to think about what other types of garments you might be able to make with this method, and how this method of being sort of a little bit more loose and playful with the pattern making, what does that allow us, or what does it free us up to be able to do, and where might you take this next? So that's my pattern. Do we have participant questions before I talk about anything else?
Not seeing any yet. Everyone definitely please feel free to ask questions. And also, I think Julia just asked some really thought-provoking questions of her own that if you have immediate thoughts about, I think we'd all love to hear you reflect on them too. Yeah, amazing though. Thank you, Julia.
Of course. So Louisa shared with you a PDF a little while ago, I think at the beginning, but that has full step-by-step instructions on how to pattern your pants and also how to sew your pants. So if you came to our workshop and you want to just be able to reference that kind of quickly later, that's all written out and in that document. But I do want to show you just quickly how you might lay out this pattern on your pants and start to cut it, just to kind of bridge that gap between, I have a pattern piece, now what do I do with it? So I'm going to work on a smaller scale for this, just so you can see it quickly. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take fabric, whatever fabric you want. I'm going to fold it however much I need in half, and then in half again. So this allows us to have two pieces that face one direction and two pieces that are going to face the other. So I think that anyone that's ever made pants has probably made the mistake where you cut all four legs facing the same direction. So I'm going to lay this down, and I'm going to tilt my screen down. We'll see if that will work. So
Julia, just to clarify, you're ending up cutting 4 of the pattern piece, but 2 of them, the crotch seam will sort of point to the right and 2 of the middle point to the left.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So I folded my fabric accordion style, so one way this way, one way that way, into 4 pieces. And then I'm placing my pattern piece on top. I'm gonna adjust my setup for a second. Yeah, that's gonna work, I think. Sorry, everybody. There we go. Okay. So my pattern piece, I'm going to lay it out on my fabric. And then you can either pin your piece down, or I'm just going to use some things that are around my house, some small bowls to weight it. And then I'm going to cut it out. I'm hoping my half scale, my small scale pair of pants can become baby pants, but we'll see. So cut out my pants. I'm gonna take my pattern away. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open these up so that I'm gonna sew them so that the right sides are together. So I wanna lay out my two legs. So I'm laying one pattern piece down and the other on top so that they're, the right side of the fabric is facing outward. And I only cut 3 of them, but I'll show you with a pair that I sewed before. So they'll look like this to begin with. What you'll do is you'll sew the inner seams of each first, and then the outer seams. Of your 2 pant legs. Then I like to flip them inside out for the next step, which is sewing the crotch seam. Then I have my 2 pant legs. And then I would take the 2 tops and I'm gonna put them together and pin. And I'm gonna pin this whole crotch seam together. So I like to make sure that the 2 inseams line up like that, and I pin them there. I think that pressing your seams closed helps a lot, or open, sorry. So making sure all the seams that you sewed are flat helps a lot. And then you would sew this seam from the wrong side. And then you'd have a little pair of pants. And these wouldn't have your hem or your waistband yet. But I think that this is a good time to try on your pants and just see how they fit. Because if they don't fit, you'll know now rather than after you've added all those details that you're gonna want. So that's gonna be our pair of pants. I would then, if I wanted to hem these, we added around a 2-inch hem, or the width of your thumb, but you would fold in about 1/2 inch, or maybe the width of your thumbnail, and then another 1.5 inches. Again, I think it's good to try on your pair of pants. Maybe you want to change the length of your hem, but you would pin those and sew them. I'm going to estimate a little bit. And then you'll know where to hem your pair of pants. And then we're going to do something very similar for the waistband, but I'll show you a little bit differently. I think we added around 2 inches for our waist. You can make this whatever size that you would like. Because if you're adding a piece of elastic, it may end up being a different size. So I know that my elastic will fit through this casing, but if I had something wider, I would need a wider space. So I've folded this also around 1/2 inch and then another 1.5 inches. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sew most of the way around, but I'm gonna leave space here so that there's a little space that I can get inside that casing and thread the elastic through. So what you can do for this is you can take that piece of elastic, wrap it around your waist, and then you'll know how long that piece of elastic needs to be. And then you'll take your safety pin, you'll attach that to the end of the elastic, and that will allow you to feed the elastic through that casing by pushing the elastic around. So you can hold onto the safety pin and pull that through. If we were gathering the full pair of pants, the elastic would probably be smaller than the casing, which is sort of the idea that it's gathering and it's fitting the garment closer to your body. So you just want to make sure that this end doesn't slide through accidentally. And then you'd pull this out. You would sew your 2 pieces of elastic together. And then you'd sew the rest of your seam closed. And that would be how you'd make your waistband, which would end up looking like this. So I added a second stitch to enclose the elastic, but it would look kind of like that. Okay, so that's my demo. I do want to open it up for questions or any ideas, or if I can show anyone anything again.
Yay, thank you, Julia. Yeah, a second encouragement to submit questions if you have them. Meanwhile, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So some people may have tried doing a more kind of textbook traditional pant draft before. Some people may not have, but this is definitely different from that. You made a different set of choices, which are really interesting and energizing. And just curious, why did you make the choices you did? What was your how did you come up with this?
Yeah, so for those of you who aren't as familiar with traditional drafting methods, there's usually a lot more geometry involved. There's usually quite a bit more math and measuring and making sure, you know, there are a lot of specific lines in specific places. And I just kind of wanted to see if there was another way to pattern a pair of pants that were going to fit uniquely to your body, but didn't rely on quite as much precision. And if I could just sort of do it in a more playful way. So I think you get trade-offs with the process because some of the areas of your pattern aren't going to be quite as specific. So I'd encourage anyone that came to the workshop to play with that and see, you know, what part of this method do you like, what part don't you like, and go from there and discover your own method. But a lot of the choices I made were because they felt more intuitive and they felt kind of like a logic that I understood a little better.
Totally. Yeah, I love that. You had used the word loose earlier too. It's sort of like a looser way of pattern making that is really refreshing and inspiring. Another question, so I noticed that you use a lot of non-traditional tools. You know, you're using a board instead of a ruler and a piece of string, and you showed us a pot lid, and you talked a little bit about it, but I'd just love to hear more. Why do you do that? What do you think that lends to the pattern making process for you?
Yeah, totally. Louisa, you talked a bit about PIP's mission at the beginning to make pattern making accessible. And I think one of the things that keeps people from pattern making sometimes is not having the right tools. There are a lot of really specific tools that you can use to pattern, but you can also use things that you find around your house. And there are a lot of things to substitute, and that can actually kind of lead to surprising discoveries. So it may have looked a little silly for me to hold up a pot lid, but I did want to kind of make that point through my demo that you can be resourceful, you can find things to use.
Yeah, I love it so much. And again, any final questions? This is your last chance. Oh, here we go. Can you go over again how to add room to adjust for the fact that our bodies are three-dimensional? The directions in the document say, hold up your hands to the widest part of your lower body. We're going to add this amount to one side of our pant pattern, but I'm not sure what this amount refers to.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for your question, Kristen. Let me find the string. But it's really like, we traced the front of our body. So it's essentially like if we turn to the side, we didn't really account for like this space. We accounted for some of it, but not all of it. So it's essentially like if you were standing sideways and looking in the mirror, you'd want to kind of catch like the side of your body and add that. Does that help?
Yeah, Kristen, let us know if that helped. Sounds like it's almost as though you lie on your side and have somebody trace you that way too. It's almost that dimension.
Yeah, so you could like lie down, trace your body, and then kind of roll to the side and trace that side. I added all of it just to see, like to make a bigger pattern, but you could add probably less. I don't think you need all of that space. You just want to be sure that your hips are going to fit through the pattern, or whatever part of your body you're working with that's the widest. Okay, cool. So you could also like start at the center front and measure this way to like your side, and use that from the center too, if you prefer. Cool. Okay. I'm glad that helped.
Great. Any more questions? Let's give people another moment to think of any last minute questions. And another question for you. I read out your bio, but in a more conversational way, how did you first start pattern making? What's sort of the story of you and pattern making?
Yeah, so I grew up sewing as a kid. My grandmother taught me how to sew and taught me how to make my own clothes, but sort of generally using store-bought patterns, which is super cool too. But I was in high school when I got involved in this like sustainable sewing store, and they did after school classes for kids. And that's where I really got excited about pattern making. But I learned it as like a very sort of specific by the books drafting method, where I, made my slopers and then I edited my slopers. So I guess then when I went to college, I got more interested in alternative methods. And now that I work with kids, I'm a teacher. I like the idea of kind of trying to make this more accessible and a little bit more logical for different minds, different ways of thinking.
Yeah, I think that the grown-up audience appreciates that as well. So thank you.
I know. Yeah, it's good for grown-ups too.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any more questions, so I think we're gonna wrap things up. So let's close it out.
All right, thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah, so just a few quick reminders. Well, this is not a reminder, this is new information. If you have further questions, Julia has very kindly offered to answer them after this day. So you can direct message her on Instagram. She is at Julia John on John Street, all of those Johns with H's. And she also said that you can email her at julia.john95@gmail.com. Also, again, reminder, it's free. We're really glad that you're here, period. If you feel moved to donate to her, you can do so through Venmo at Julia-John. Thank you, Julia, for your wonderful pattern making demonstration. It was so cool and inspiring. Thank you everyone for watching. Quick reminder, tomorrow, Pip is having another awesome pattern making event, tomorrow being Sunday, August 2nd at 1 p.m. EDT. And that one is called T-shirt Fitting and Alteration by my super talented friend, Lala. For more info on all events this summer, you can follow at Pattern Making in Public Places on Instagram. The recording of this video will be up soon, next few days, on patternmakingpublicplaces.com and on YouTube. And thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful day.